Hello, everybody. Welcome to Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. I'm Nick Pallavita. I will be your moderator for today's food fight. And today we're going to have a very special topic, Chinaphobia and TikTok. And the reason we're going to have this topic is the Honorable David M. Walker is on a plane and will not be here today. So with that, we're going to bring in our panelists who will be here today. We're going to bring in Sasha Starr, who's the head of modern investments and also the famous show Ukraine, Russia, and China, beaming in from Canada. We're going to be talking about China today. And we're also going to LA and we're going to bring in Rick Rosner, who's a member of the Mega Society, but not the MAGA Society, definitely not. And then, of course, Mark Lee, who everybody knows because you can't get rid of Mark Lee. He's with us forever. If not, we're going to create an AI of Mark Lee. So when he's gone, he'll just keep appearing. So topic today is Chinaphobia and TikTok. We know in this bill, they passed a bill banning the Chinese ownership of TikTok by China. Well, what is your thoughts on that? In other words, I'll start with Sasha because he's from Canada, so he may not care that America says China can't own TikTok, but then he might care because he may own stock in ByteDance. So what are your thoughts on the U.S. government coming in sua sponte and weighing in that they can just ban a entity from a country from owning a stock? What are your thoughts on that, Sasha?
I don't think that China owns even 1% of TikTok. There are Chinese owners. Yes, there are, and they control TikTok. But I don't think that China does it. However, the Chinese government makes private businesses, including TikTok, to supply certain vital information on users and other data which could be available. And that is a big no-no for U.S. government because U.S. government feels that Chinese government is getting a lot of leverage by actually getting all this information from Chinese ownership of TikTok, which is, I think, is over 50%. So the idea is that if that would be sold to American consortium, which could include probably some Chinese investors, but they wouldn't control the company. They would have 7%, maybe 12%, whatever it might be. So this would eliminate compliance of TikTok with Chinese regulators. Is it fair policy or strategy of U.S. government? It's up to people to decide, and I don't think there is a single answer that would cover all the angles. But the strategically idea to resist providing a lot of personal information to Chinese government, I think it's vital and definitely can be implemented and probably will be implemented.
Rick, what are your thoughts on this issue? In other words, there were 3 bills that were passed in Washington, D.C., and one of them was within a year that the Chinese government has to divest themselves of ByteDance, which is the owner of TikTok. What's your thoughts?
So, I mean, we are absolutely right to be worried about China. And I'd say fairly wrong to worry about TikTok. It's gathering information on us. So a bunch of teens, our phones are. I mean, we have no privacy. Everything is spying on us. China's not going to get more information because we watch TikTok. China can be patient. Well, I was going off on China, and my future son-in-law said, "Calm down. China used to be going great guns, but now their head dictator, who is a Xi Jinping or whatever, he's kind of an old school dictator, and he's screwing things up for China. So that gains us a couple of years. But China is a juggernaut. China has 17 cities with more than 10 million people, these mega cities. It's got more than 150 million cities with more than 1 million people, and they're all making stuff. China pushed all its people off of farms and into cities so it can become the world leader in tech. And that's where the threat lies. And China steals from the rest of the world. If you go to China to make something, because it's cheap to make stuff there, they will absolutely rip you off. They will make their own version of it and sell it to the world, or just within China, which has 1.4 billion people. So yeah, be nervous about China, but don't run around with your hair on fire. And TikTok, who cares?
Mark Lee, what are your thoughts on this fear
My
of China?
question, this fear of China, this fear of TikTok and all along those lines is that what kind of information are they collecting, and are they the only ones collecting it? Because one of the things that I think you brought up and other people have brought up is that, there are other giants that might be American owned or even owned from other countries like Facebook, like a number of others that are doing the same thing that we're saying that TikTok is doing, and all in that space. So are we going to have a unilateral ban where we're going to ban all social media? Because we know that we even get in trouble, whether it's on TikTok or because we don't air the TikTok, but whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on some of the other platforms when we say things that they feel are not approved. And sometimes it takes them a whole year to get to you. Because one of the, as you know, Nick, one of the top interviews that we've ever had was actually an interview, and I do not deny that that's what he was, because he will even tell you that himself, that he is for lack of a better term, a conspiracy theorist. And you can look up Oli Damagard, but it is one of our top rated videos, because I had the pleasure of interviewing him almost 2 years ago and everything. And I just recently got a notice from YouTube that there was disinformation. And I'm going like, well, one, he was giving me his opinion, and two, it is happening at that particular time and all along those lines. So they waited almost 2.5 years, because I think that was one of the first videos that I did for this network. And as you had pointed out, it's one of our still top rated ones and all in that space. But because he said some things that might be against the vaccine, or that there might be aliens on the planet and all in that space, then he was chastised, and our YouTube was chastised as well. But it took him 2.5 years to chastise us and everything. So they also are not always doing a great job of kind of regulating what they should be doing. I did have an economic question for you based on an article I saw, but I saw your question and your hand up, Rick, as well.
All right. So yeah, so I just Googled, does TikTok spy on you? And this article comes up, and it says that the Washington Post worked with a privacy researcher to look under the hood at TikTok, concluding that the app, it spies on you, but it doesn't collect any more data than your typical mainstream social network, which we don't care about. We like being spied on, because then we get suggestions that are appropriate to us. There are ways to make your phone so it doesn't spy on you as much. Do we have time to learn those ways? No, we don't care. We go on our phone, we talk around our phones, we type into our phones, and then our phones throws articles and products at us that shows it's been spying on us. But we're like, oh, that's creepy. And then we go on about our business.
But Rick, along those same lines and everything, two things cross my mind on that. One is that, TikTok is probably spying on us. But as I've said before, I've got this lovely thing called a phone, and all along those lines. And I can tell you that if I go on a trip somewhere in Durham, or even if I go out of the state and everything, I will probably look on that phone later, and it will tell me all the places that I have been and all in that space. So that is not anything that TikTok's doing. That's something that several tracking abilities are doing on that regular basis. And even to what you were just saying, they'll give you all these suggestions of what you should buy based on what you've already bought. So TikTok is not doing anything that the other sources of information aren't doing as well. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, is what we are picking solely on TikTok when others are doing it in that same space and all along those lines. I think we've got Toby. Maybe he's got some thoughts about TikTok and the TikTok spying and all along those lines. So are you worried about TikTok spying on you and everything, Jacoby? And are they taking away your gaming and all along those lines?
I mean, I saw a meme the other day, and I completely agree with it. I am more worried about who owns the Supreme Court than I worry about who owns TikTok.
Well, I have a question about this fear of China. Why are we afraid of China? I mean, when I got on the website Understanding China, of course, China doesn't think well of the United States, but half the people here don't think well of the U.S. either. But they point out Look at what we've done. We've stayed out of wars, unlike the US, who gets into wars all the time. We built a big train infrastructure, which instead we spent our money on building charging stations. Okay. We build beautiful cities and some of the tallest buildings in the world and the best cities in the world. And the US still has a clunky train situation, clunky cities, yet we're afraid of China. What is the big fear of China?
The reason we're afraid, and don't give it, China does have some issues. Yes, there is some of the technology stuff. They, the stealing the air, or the rubber prices, so messes up tires, and yeah, I mean there's some economical issues that we can go back and forth on, which is that's just normal for anywhere, really. That's global politics, and same thing with dealing with the economy being a global thing. The reason we are scared, quote unquote, scared of China is because it's politics. It's good politics. We fear the other, and we've got to make sure that this president is going to protect us from this boogeyman. Now, this president isn't strong enough to protect us from that boogeyman. But hey, fear sells. Fears moves people to the polls.
No, it definitely sells and everything. But you heard Nick mention these charging stations and all along those lines. But it is my understanding, and I want to say that both of my parents, and this was decades ago, had the privilege of going to China, and I think they both stepped on the Great Wall and all along those lines in that space. But that being said, don't they have charging stations in China as well? Because I'm thinking they have electric cars and charging stations in that part of the world as well. I don't know if they're telling you that in that Facebook group that you belong to, but I think they have them also, even though you think there is something we don't need to be invested at here. But am I correct in thinking that, Jitovi, since you follow the news?
China has, they're the biggest auto market, really, if I'm correct. Because, Rick, you're right there at the computer, but isn't China the biggest auto market? That's why the brand new, like Tesla isn't the biggest EV maker right now. It's that there's a Chinese EV that's out there that's actually the most purchased. I mean, they're the biggest EV maker right now. So, I mean, it's a huge market.
You're right. So China was the #1 car sales country in 2023, increasing 28% year over year to over 30 million vehicles. But still 30 million vehicles for a country of 1.3 billion people. But anyway, they buy twice as many cars in China as we do in the U.S.
Hey, Rick, there's no doubt that Tiananmen Square was a travesty, and that is definitely something that happened many years ago and all along those lines. But I think that even in that Understanding China group that Nick is a proud member of, they will point out the fact that there are political prisoners in the United States as well. So we're fearing China, but don't we have some of the same issues that they have? As a matter of fact, there's even been some people
we have more people in prison.
Right.
In absolute numbers, and of course by percentage, than any other developed country. In just about any country on earth, we have 2 million people in prison. So you could argue that some of those people are political prisoners. Like people in prison for anything to do with marijuana is ridiculous, unless they killed people because they were a marijuana kingpin. But if they're just in prison for having a big bale of marijuana when it's totally legal in a bunch of states, you can argue that's a political prisoner at this point.
I mean, so there are differences, and yeah, I mean, if you want to argue that the marijuana, being in prison for marijuana or even smaller drug charges could be a political prisoner, I would disagree, but I mean, but there's a difference in speaking out against the government and being arrested and being blocked in particular ways. So there are different things that individuals have to deal with there than they do here. Yes, we have by far, our biggest industry is the prison industry. We by far outnumber the number of people in prison compared to any other country. But yes, political prisoners in China, yeah. But again, the reason we fear China isn't due to political prisoners. It's not due to the stealing of technology. It's due to our politics. instead of our policies against China have become more backwards because of our politics, instead of being, being able to understand that, just as Rick pointed out, number one auto buyer right now is China. How do we make it more profitable for us to sell auto cars there? That should be the idea, instead of, we should all hate China, and in the back room selling as many cars as possible or selling as many things as possible there. No, we just got to change our mindset and stop this isolationist ideas that are running rampant in our society right now, and start thinking and understanding that the world is huge. Once the internet opened up, we have to deal with the world and work with the world.
So here's the answer to the China, 30 million cars sold there last year. 150,000 of them were American, 0.5%. So we're not breaking that market at all.
Yep.
Yeah, Sasha, you had a point.
Jacoby, I wanted to tell you that I disagree with you on the goal of American government to sell as many cars in China as possible. It's not goal, and should not be a goal of American administration or government or Congress or anybody. It's a goal of U.S. car companies like GM, Ford, and others to sell cars. That's what they are existing for. Go and sell. So what has and remember, if they're profitable, they will pay very little taxes in the United States of America. So there is very little use for average people in US. How many cars GM will eventually sell in China? It's almost irrelevant.
I disagree with that, because for example, if we sold, say 2 million cars in China, right? We sell 2 million cars in China. We utilize whatever U.S. steel that we have. That means that's more jobs in creating steel and creating bodies for those cars. And then we create the technology that's here. For example, the AI technology that goes inside. That's more jobs within the U.S. Then it's just there's more to a car than just, hey, there's a car and that's it. So all the intricate pieces that are inside of the big time cars now, if we were to produce, say, for example, the EVs have the engines, the different style engines on the inside of it. If we were to change over these old combustible engine areas in Detroit that are all run down and not even being used anymore, change those over to the EV style. They're creating EV engines there and all the intricate pieces. And now we're selling 3 million cars instead of 100,000 cars over in China. That's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of money coming in. So what the U.S. government needs to focus on is creating those avenues, because they can't say, hey, we're going to give all this. No, that's not it. You've got to create the avenues that allow for that trade to be possible, and not think about, okay, well, the government has to sell cars. It's not the government selling cars. It's the government creating a pathway. We always get into the idea that the government is this and the government. No, really, an idea is a best analogy for what the government is a referee in a basketball game, for example. So that's a better way to look at it than, hey, the government should.
This referee is not really qualified to be that referee because of their quite open anti-China policies. It cannot be trusted as a referee to be there. So if you eliminate that, now speaking about the U.S. cars, remember that the companies that producing cars, they actually manufacture and create very little. They have suppliers of all kinds, of anywhere from doors to brakes to engine to anything. So especially if you compare U.S. salaries of workers to Chinese, you will see that U.S. car producing business cannot be successful in China. They just can't compete, period. So if they want to be there and sell this half of 1% or less, that's okay. That's
I disagree that it can't be competitive. The reason that it's tough for it to be competitive is the fact that you have Oh, I got the dog barking.
While he's getting the dog together and
All right,
everything.
so I have another question. Why should you need a car in China? I just looked it up. 49 Chinese cities have subways, have public rail transit. If you live in a Chinese city that has 8 million people and you've got a good subway system, why do you need a car? You can go wherever you want without the expense of having a car. If you need to go to another city, you rent a car. So China has like modern technology. It's bringing modernity to meet the needs of, okay, it's a dictatorship, so you can't say exactly what you want, but you can get a good job, and you can hook up, you can meet people, you can do all the modern things you want to do. You don't necessarily need a car.
But what gets me is, what is all this fear of China? In other words, this outlash against TikTok was basically feeding into a fear of China. Your fear of China because what? What have they done except they manufacture stuff better than we do, and they sell more stuff than we buy. When I buy stuff, a lot of it's from China, but they have to compete now against Vietnam. They got to compete against India. They got to compete against Mexico. There's big fear.
Like Vietnam,
China.
India,
we're scared of them.
China is openly, together with Russia, they're openly interfering in U.S. elections. And therefore, if Chinese government that has data on all TikTok users, and there are a lot of them in the United States, they have data that they can work with, and they can set up the machinery, which similar Russia did 8 years ago, before election 2016. So they can send all kind of messages and information to these TikTok users. So this is where the danger, and it's a present and real danger.
Artificial intelligence can interfere with the
No.
election.
Artificial intelligence without data is nothing. It's zero.
And counselor, show me
you need
evidence.
Data. You need names.
Some evidence where they interfere.
I don't need evidence, Nick. I don't need evidence.
No, I need evidence.
What are you going to crusade for TikTok? Okay, get ready. I crusade for TikTok. Never touch TikTok. TikTok is our everything. Okay, go ahead and please yourself.
So I agree with Sasha. The ultimate science fiction fear of China is that China eventually, not 2 years from now, but maybe 10 years from now, ends up owning your brain, owning your opinions, owning the information that you absorb. Elon Musk, there's crappy video of Elon Musk showing how Neuralink works, where they drill a hole in your skull, they drop a chip in there. Now, eventually the technology will be less stupid, and there will be direct information interfaces along those lines. And then the question becomes, when you have a chip in your brain, are you running the chip, or is the chip running you? And, China is going to be part of that whole deal of like.
Everybody's going to be a part of that, though. Neuralink is not the only one that's the competitor out there. There are actually multiple people that are actually making a quote unquote Neuralink to actually allow for people to, what Neuralink's used for, to talk, move parts of your body that can't be moved, for paraplegics and so on and so forth. So that Neuralink's not the only one, and it's just that Elon Musk is investing.
Crappy compared to some of the others.
But the fear of China, and to speak on what Sasha said, because Sasha actually brought up one point that I will agree with, is that in our government right now, you have a lot of anti-China ideas and policies and everything else, rather than, instead of coming up with creative ways and solutions to work with as a competitor and not an adversary. Because we, again, fall into the political idea, because we all know that's why the Republican Party is great at their messaging, because the Republican Party uses fear of the boogeyman, fear of this unknown. And with China, honestly, yes, there are some issues there. There are lots of issues there. But there are also issues with Saudi Arabia and all the other countries that we deal with. So we have to work with and create competitive ways to like, for example, if you go into the gaming market right now, in the Asian market or in the Chinese and the Japanese market right now, because the PlayStation comes out of that arena. In that arena, the PlayStation dominates. Right now, it's the number one gaming system. However, the computer is still the number one across the board, but it's the number one gaming system. It beats out Xbox. However, Xbox dominates on the online area of things. When you're looking at the different games they own, the actual their Xbox Live service, it dominates the market there. So we have to think of different ways to compete, because the Xbox is never going to outsell in China the PlayStation, but the Xbox service will outsell the PlayStation service in China. So there's other ways that we can attack and other ways that we can, overcome and create new solutions and, have money coming in. But yeah, I'll agree with Sasha. The anti-China, easy fear-mongering stuff, we have to get out of that. We have to think of better ways for the future.
Toby, and this is, I brought up before, and like I said, I've got a neighbor upstairs. We were looking a couple of weeks ago at the solar eclipse and all along those lines. But what do you say to those folks that are part of that fear-mongering group that will look at people that are coming in from China and some of the other what are considered socialist or communist countries, and that are in their mind getting the education and then going back and taking that education to their respective countries and all in that space? Because that is something that I hear from some of my more conservative friends, is this fear of how they're coming in. And
you fix that by making America still seem like a friendly country. You get rid of the xenophobia. So yeah, a ton of people from all the smartest people from across the world come to this country to get educated. You want them to stay and keep their skills here, a lot of them. And if our country is filled with redneck rhetoric, then they're going to say F that. They're going to go back to China, which has a zillion great cities where, you used to come to the U.S. to make it rain in a strip club with your tech millions. Now you can go, there's dozens of cities in China where you can make it rain and live in a penthouse.
And this, I guess, to take that same notion and to take it even closer to home, which is one of the sayings that I always hate. And this leads into that, which actually could help in the sense that what Rick is talking about. So the one saying that I always hate, and Mark, you know this one, and Rick and Steve, you guys might know as well, how people say you can take the kid out the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the kid. I hate that saying. Why? Because we all want to go back home. Why am I trying to take the hood out of the kid? That's where he's from. That's his home. So basically what you want to do is, like Rick said, instead of being so xenophobic about things, let's go ahead and it's okay if, somebody comes from, overseas, learns here, learns, okay, these are our goals, our priorities. Just learns the culture here. And then that piece of that culture, they can take back to their home if they want to, or they can stay here if they'd like. But even people, when they go back home, or even send that parts of our culture, because whenever you go anywhere, you take a piece of the culture of the area that you're from anyway. But you can take that home and spread that culture and that understanding that, okay, we aren't these demonist individuals who want to come for whatever. No, we begin to become partners at a grassroots level, and things like where I forgot where it was in China, where they took back the panda, and because the panda had a rare condition that it was losing its hair, they used that as political propaganda to show that the American people really don't like Chinese stuff, and they're always attacking, and they even attack this panda. That's what's going on right now because of what we do here, and because of the fear mongering and the xenophobia stuff that we do. So if we can change that, that would be great.
You take people from the hood, you educate them, and then you have all these like huge billion-dollar entrepreneurs and companies. Beats by Dre, billion-dollar company. Freaking like you take people. Freaking all these companies are people who come out of the hood. They learn.
There was a whole industry.
Commerce, and they give you hood flavored products that are awesome.
Hey, Rick, there was a whole industry that came right next to China, and I think it's still popular, maybe not as popular as it used to be. But I first learned when there was a restaurant that isn't there anymore about K-pop because there was a young lady that was very much into K-pop, and that's from Korea. So, yeah, sometimes we can get this music even coming from the Asian theater that has become very popular and all along those lines. But
Yeah,
Rick,
because it's good, because it's catchy, and because you mix the world, you take and you get good stuff.
no doubt about that. I've had a quick question getting off of xenophobia, and this is for you, Nick, and everything along those lines. But I saw this article earlier. Actually, I think it came out a couple of days ago. But there's this notion about money and happiness, and whether money can buy happiness. And there was a survey by Alliance Life, which is a insurance company, and this was done in April, and they said that a whopping 63% of Americans are more scared of running out of money than they are scared of dying. And definitely, as one that wants to live a very long time, I am with them on that and everything. But they're saying that the ever-rising cost of living, as well as inflation, interest rate spikes, shaky markets, and other financial challenges. So they have said that a lot of people are very scared of running out of money. As a matter of fact, Kelly Levine, the VP of Consumer Insights for that company, said running out of money in retirement is a scary thought. That's why it is so.
It's Vibenomics.
But
Like my mom used to watch too much local news and too many cop shows like TJ Hooker in the 80s, and she was constantly scared of crime because that's what was being sold. And now people, if you survey people, you find out that everybody's relatively optimistic about their own finances, their own states, but then you ask them about America and they're like, no, America's in decline. It's propaganda, it's BS, it's fear mongering, but I hear it from my own wife. How are we going to survive? How are we going to not run out of money? I go, have you looked in our frickin' bank accounts? It's like, come on.
But in that same time frame, and I definitely want to hear from Nick on this. Apparently, in a separate article, because like I said, I saw a couple of these articles that were economic related. They are saying that Americans say they don't have enough money for retirement, with a solid chunk saying that they have no savings at all. It's a part of a growing retirement crisis where many can't afford to throw in the towel. And at the same time, the economy is about to see the peak boomer generation retire and deplete their savings. So they're even saying that some people.
That's also true. The boomers. People 45 and older own 15 out of every 16 privately held dollars in America. 94% of the money in America is in the hands of boomers and Gen X. Everybody else is poor as heck.
Yeah. And in that same space, and this is where I really want to hear from you, Nick, and everything. The article I read said that she remembered her father-in-law, that's the lady that was in the article, had a large pension when he retired, a practice that's far more uncommon these days, and you're in the retirement business. And he says that as the Congressional Research Service found, defined contribution plans, which are retirement plans like 401k that rely on employee contributions and are subject to market fluctuations, began to overtake defined benefit plans, which include pensions. So it looks like the pensions have been in trouble since the mid 80s. So you're in the pension business. Well, what's your thoughts on these notions of folks that are worried about not having enough retirement and enough pension?
Well, I mean, they're right, because the thing is, pensions have been in decline. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. It's just corporations don't want to fund for that because it's too expensive. A pension is a replacement of income when you go to retire. A defined contribution plan is you just dump money in and hope that you have enough to retire. So you're planning off of hope as a planning off of replacing your income. Unfortunately, our American education system, because we don't have charter schools, failed the American public once again because they don't offer retirement plans in any schools in America, like none. And they don't offer it in college. They don't offer it anywhere. Yet, if you live long enough, at some point in time, you're going to retire. And you need to know the difference between replacing your income and then having little trinkets thrown at you, which is what the system, the 401k system, is all about today. Hey, Mark, it is a real and serious problem. But that's not what we're going to discuss today. We're going to discuss Taylor Swift. We're going to discuss The Voice. We're going to discuss The Equalizer, because that's what's on TV. That's what most people want to listen to. They don't want to listen to the fact they're going to be retiring in poverty and squalor.
But do we have to retire? But do we have to retire? Because a lot of people that are working well into their 80s, well into their 90s, and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking Jatovia is still going to be doing pod TV in about another 50
Oh,
years.
well, I mean, here's the reality is, as I told people, how long are you going to work? You're going to work until you die. That's basically the American retirement system right now. Fear of China, which we are discussing today, is a big problem because it sells. What people buy is two things. Top salespeople told me this. People buy off of two reasons. Not a good product, which is what the wireheads want you to believe. They believe fear. They'll buy on fear, and they buy on greed. Okay, can they get the lowest price? They're greedy. Or can they make a lot of money? They're greedy. And then they're scared. Fear of China. Fear of China. Yet today, no one has put any evidence concretely before this court as to what we're scared of China about. And so I think this whole TikTok thing is based on one word: fear. Fear of China. We're afraid of China. Why are we afraid of China? What? Because they took a country that was basically in poverty and then made them middle class. We're afraid of China. They actually put money into a railway system where we throw it away on government programs that don't work, such as climate change, such as internet for all, such as charging stations. So the thing is, they actually are building an economy.
Are we critical of some of their policies as well? Because one of the things that I remember people being afraid of China was the fact that China is a very large population, and it is
that's
population.
good.
And they had that notion of the one-child policy, and all along those lines,
they have different policies.
That was one of the things that people were scared about, was that maybe this was going to be passed down to the U.S. and all along those lines.
Oh no, they're different than we are. We got to be.
In the previous hour, we were talking about these sparsely populated western states like Montana and South Dakota, run by idiot Republican governors. What should happen is those states should elect not idiot governors, and they should be turned into tech havens. All this wide open space. You should have giant robot factories and science fiction-y crap happening across these wide open spaces. We should be doing the same kind of massive, high-tech projects that China does and competing that way.
That would be very interesting if we actually decided to boost our K through 12. Our K through 12 used to be in the top 25 in the world. Today, we're not even in the top 25, mainly because we have a horrible public school system. We need to switch over to charter schools that emphasize science, technology, engineering, and math.
But you got to get the Republicans get their dumb fingers out of public ed. Republicans want everybody to be going to a private Christian school, getting these weird Christian educations, and so they're trying to suck money out of the public schools.
No, what hopefully they try to do is actually educate them through science,
but they
technology.
They're not. The Republican Party schools
certainly don't. So
the Republican Party, the first thing the Republican Party always cuts is education. The Republican Party is fought heavily against early childhood development programs. The Republican Party
all goes to administrative costs, Jatovia. It would be nice if it actually went to education.
Again, instead of here's the thing though. If you're saying that, the money all goes to the administration, well, why not fix that then? 75%. Why not put the money in and change the actual finances to go to the teachers and the actual funding of this and that, rather than, since it all goes to the administrators, we'll just cut funding. You know what cut funding does? That puts teachers in a bind. That puts, school workers, school support workers all in a bind because you don't have enough staff. You can't staff them because they're not getting paid. They're working 2 and 3 jobs. So therefore, your teachers are gone. So you've got to fund schools. If you want to fix the issue saying, it's all going to administrators, then you pass a law. That's what they're supposed to do.
Oh, here we go. We have fear of Republicans.
That's right now, yes.
So who's going to get every public school kid a tablet with an AI in it that has a friend that's your friend. It's your talking school friend. It's your tutor. It helps you understand everything. You got this little. How much does an iPod cost? Like 100.
These things are cheap. They're like $100.
Right.
So I wouldn't use them.
You can get all your education right here. You don't need teachers.
No, the problem. So the thing is, they're trying to get computers, which are much better, like laptops, and same thing with Chromebooks. Those are much better than doing iPads and.
All right, but they're still cheap.
Oh yeah, they're cheap. And I agree. I mean, stuff like that is necessary for all students, not just the ones that go to a charter school or a private school. The problem is right now, not all students are able to get that, and not all students are going to these high-end.
It's $100. Well, they can't get this. Come on.
If you have many students having their only meal of the day being lunch, and you're asking those people to spend $100, it's easy. It's easy for us to say, okay, we'll drop 100 here, but not for some kid whose parents can't even purchase them lunch or even dinner, and their only meal of the day is that lunch that they go to school for. That's another thing that needs to be free. I think California is now in that process, or in that group of states that allows for all lunches are free.
Every kid in California
that is
breakfast and lunch.
Huge, because the fact that food insecurity is one of the biggest reasons why kids do not learn and have a problem learning, because food insecurity. And if we're talking about, oh, well, we got to put money, we got to take money out of schools. You know, again, when you're taking money out of schools, you're taking food out of kids' mouths. That means you're having a whole group of kids end up not being able to learn.
Okay, well, let's ask, since we're supposed to be discussing China, maybe.
Well, I got a question for you.
Do they have food insecurity in China? That's my
yes,
question.
They do. Yes.
Or is it just limited to the United States?
No.
Remember, the internet knows everything, so we don't need to know anything anymore.
No, we did.
Here, we'll make it even easier. You can search up, hunger. That's an issue globally.
Yeah, but is it rampant like it is here? Remember, hold
on a second.
China, they don't have.
Didn't you just hear me earlier say, Nick? Didn't you just hear me earlier say that there was a major issue that existed in our news report, and it was coming out of Australia? That fear still exists in China as well. So yes, like even for our folks that are, it's all us guys right here now and everything, but for those women that are concerned about domestic violence and some of the ways that they are treated, those issues exist even in China. So they exist in Australia. I just mentioned that the notion of domestic violence is an issue there, and I also know that it can be an issue in some of the Asian cultures as well. But the other thing that happens with this fear, and I don't know your thoughts about this, and I don't know whether your group talks about it, that you are part of the Facebook group and everything, but there's also this notion that we bundle people together, and I think that even Jatovia talked about it a lot as well, because not everybody that is Asian is Chinese. But if you hear people talking about it, even when there's that fear, then they will say, I fear this guy, or I fear that guy, or this woman or that woman, and then you wind up talking to the people that they are fearing and find out that they're from Vietnam, they're from North Korea, they're from some other place that is Asian, but not necessarily China. So that's
right. Yeah, Asian hate is stupid. Go on.
Right. So the average, I just looked up, the average income in China is $50,000 a year. That's a ton. It's basically tripled since 2012. So they're doing something right. So if they do have food insecurity, I'm sure they do, it's being lessened because they have an economic system that's like.
Right. Look up also the poverty rate and the hunger as well. And in terms of what you were talking about, Mark, in terms of the domestic violence and so on and so forth, there are some cultures that I think it's actually in China as well, where the women CEO. It's hard to find a woman CEO, and even some men CEOs won't deal with women CEOs. You have to wear. So yeah. It's a cultural thing as well.
Okay, I just looked it up. So the share of China's population in extreme poverty has dropped from 90% in 1980 to 0.
That is
Well,
zero.
and so we're scared of a
That
country
is
that has
zero
gone from
because
90% to
Well,
near
this is
zero.
extreme poverty.
This is what gets
people
me. What's the
making, all right, so I
fear?
mean, what their definition of extreme poverty is ridiculous, making less than $2 a day. So, I mean, all right.
yeah, that's not extreme poverty.
No, that's definitely extreme poverty.
I
They're
mean
making a little higher.
that would probably make zero in the U.S. as well.
Yeah.
But wait, if you want to, but here's another chart for making less than 550 a day, and it's dropped from in 1980, like the whole population, 90% everybody was making less than $5 a day, down to a quarter of the population today.
Hey, Nick
Yeah,
and Ricky,
yeah, but
because one of the
My
flip
curiosity is where that's coming from, because if you think about it, that's saying in 25 years they had the vast majority of the population was so impoverished, but in 25 years we cleared it all. I mean, you can
yeah,
still find stories. So one of the things, this is actually really interesting as well in terms of like recycling. You know how you have the computer recycling and so on and so forth. One of the biggest things that they recycle with that computer recycling stuff on those motherboards is the copper and all the other mechanical things that are there. There's your extreme poverty, because a lot of that stuff ends up in China, some ends up in India, and so on and so forth. And actually, they have areas where they have people that are sitting there without masks and everything else, and trying to remove that stuff by heat. You also have, if I remember, isn't that where there's that circuit board maker that deals with all different things that we utilize from cell phones to computers where they have suicide nets on the outside of it because people are basically worked to death.
And
And
the people who make shit for Apple.
Yeah, and so I don't know how, because a lot of those individuals are in extreme poverty or in poverty, and they have to work there, and they work so long they end up wanting to kill themselves because they feel that's better instead of actually working from the time they get up to the time they go to sleep.
Yeah, but
if we're going to worry about China, we also need to worry about India. Like I'm looking at India. India, 1980, 60% of the population in extreme poverty. That same $2 a day thing. Now it's 10%. So they're waking up too. And are they stealing our information? Is that what we need to worry? No, they're going to outcompete us because China plus India together, 8 times our population. They're going to get more and more educated, and they're just going to become a bigger and bigger chunk of the world economy. We were spoiled because at the end of World War II, we had half of the world's manufacturing because World War II destroyed the world, except us, because we got our own continent over here away from the war. And, we got spoiled.
But Rick, along those same lines, India has, and is still very much a part of their society, a very in-depth caste system. As a matter of fact, some of my friends that are in India will tell you that caste system actually is part of the reason that I think they're called the untouchable, but they're those that are in extreme poverty and all along those lines and everything. So that is still very much a part of their narrative.
So if India gets its shit together, and right now India has Hindu on Muslim strife there, kind of. I don't know if you call it racism, but it's like it's sectism, and that's a huge problem. India historically and probably now has a huge rape problem, and the caste system adds to all this. But as India modernizes, India now has more people than China, 1.4 billion people, more than 4 times our population. When they get their crap together, then whoa, Betty, watch out for frickin' India. They're not going to take us over. They're just going to outcompete us.
And the thing is, the news doesn't bring up India and China, yet the population and the demographics all show that what you're saying, Rick, is true. India and China will overtake us. And rather than figuring out how we're going to be able to work with them, instead we get this fear of China.
But Nick,
how bad is it to be overtaken? Like you look at, England owned the world. They said the sun never set on England, which meant that England owned so much of the world in the 18th, 19th century that there was always a place owned by England where it was high noon. because they have like dozens and dozens.
Yeah, it was called colonialism, which is not something we're trying to go back
That's
to.
all gone away. England doesn't own beans anymore, but it's still nice in England. We go to England to visit our kid, and it's like, oh, okay, this is nice.
Oh, we also have some very
anymore.
stupid foreign policies. We had taken over Afghanistan, subjugated them. We should have held on to them and just kept them. I mean, the U.S. doesn't think like a colonial empire. We need to go back to that.
We could have held Afghanistan with 10,000 troops.
No, we don't. We don't need to do colonialism again.
Why would we ban a country that we had legitimately
just to point out,
taken over?
Rick, let's listen to the two black guys on the panel. Let's not go back to colonialism.
Wait. We got to start thinking about America's great power. And here we had a country.
Well, hold on a second.
We don't want to do the colonizer thing again.
Wait. Hold on. Is it colonialism to prevent the Taliban from taking over Afghanistan?
I don't care what you say it is, right? Mike Rake's right. We had Afghanistan. If we had held Afghanistan, there probably would not have been a war in Ukraine, because Russia would be scared to death of the fact that the United States is actually exercising our muscle and taking over and maintaining.
But hold on a second.
But just to get back to the colonizer thing, the reason that there was a war, the reason that people,
we're not
for example, it's not a matter of being a wimp. It's a matter of understanding. People want their own land and want to be governed by their own people, not the fact of some group of people coming in from another country, taking over their country. And then, that's what being a
superpower is all about.
But hold on a second.
We weren't running Afghanistan. We were propping up Afghanistan's crappy government that folded as soon as we pulled out. But that government and our being there kept the Taliban, who are a bunch of incompetent a-holes, from running Afghanistan, which is now.
Hey, Rick, I know we've only got a few more minutes to go and everything, but in that same line of thought and everything, because I know we've only got a few more minutes to go, I did see an article recently where they are saying that China is about to insert itself into the world politics, because apparently they're about to broker a deal. And if Sasha wants to jump in this, he can also give us his thoughts in the next 5 minutes and everything. But they're about to broker a deal that will actually end the war in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, because that's something I've been hearing over the last couple of days, is that China is about to broker a deal that could end that particular war. So any thoughts about China maybe using
that? Sounds like BS. China is kind of aligned with Russia, right? In the war, like Russia goes to China for some resources because their resources are being depleted. Is that correct?
Yeah, they do. They go to China, and China supplies them with.
They go to China and Iran right now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that Ukraine's going to fold. That sounds like propaganda there.
Yeah, and we should have also, since we took over Iraq, we should have kept Iraq. We should have planted an American flag and said this is now the province of the United States of America.
Nope.
And in terms of the Iraqi citizens, I care less about them.
We planted that flag on the moon. How did that go? Did we own the moon?
Yeah, we own the moon.
It ain't about the moon. It ain't about that.
When Trump becomes president, he'll make America great again.
Wait. Let's talk about Trump and China. Let's talk about Trump and China. Trump is isolationist. Under Trump, the U.S. pulled back. China saw an opportunity to become the world's friend. We give out a ton of foreign aid, which helps us because the world loves us. It helps because we're only 4% of the world. We need to work with the world. If we're going to pull back, then China steps in with foreign aid, and then the world loves China, and then China gets to dominate the world.
Rick, who is
I don't want to give them foreign aid. I want to take over their countries. Okay.
Yeah, you can't take
liberals want to give
that didn't work well. Ask Mao Zedong when people tried to take over China. There's a billion people.
Really
it's kind of hard to take over a billion people. Don't want to be taken over.
Take over Afghanistan. We keep Afghanistan.
So the U.S.
we go into a country, we take it over. It's now our country. They
No,
get to
no,
live
no,
there
no, no. The
under our
U.S. was
pleasure.
friends with the
But
world.
no,
The U.S.
Abe,
has
give me-
eight. The U.S. has
Abe.
800 military bases on foreign
Mhm.
soil.
Hey,
That
Nick.
we don't
Hey,
own the
Nick.
world, but we're friends with the world.
No, but
Friends
speaking of
with
being friends with
guns.
the
I
world,
don't care if we're friends with the
5 minutes
world.
to go and everything. But Nick, aren't we technically
Own the world,
speaking?
baby.
Aren't we technically speaking also so much friends with China? Because one of the things I remember, and I think it's still the case, is that one of our biggest consumers is actually China. Doesn't McDonald's still live in? Isn't
Yeah,
McDonald's?
yeah. We have a
Isn't
lot. We have a
Coca-Cola
lot of
still in
chicks in
China?
with China.
Or
We're going
isn't
to have
there
to
a
deal
number
with
of
China.
our companies? While we're complaining about China coming here, are there a number of our companies that are actually going into China?
Yeah, we're going to have to deal with China. We have to deal with India
Well,
because those are big
just
countries.
imagine
But
the
these
future
tiny
in
little
your head.
countries, just take them over.
Imagine daily life in the future, 20, 30 years from now. We're going to be, everything's going to be, have AI in it. We're going to be surrounded by robots helping us with freaking everything. Half of that stuff, half of those robots are going to be Chinese. Half of the AI is going to be Chinese with weird, like Americanized Chinese names. It's going to happen. And, how much of the world we get to continue to dominate will depend on whether we have stupid policies or not. But
yeah, and we need to have takeover policies. We need to get rid of these liberal lunatics that say,
no, we
we're going
need
to give
to
them
we
aid.
need
No,
to
we're
make
not gonna
sure
give them
every
aid.
kid knows how to
We're going to go
code.
take them
We need
over.
to raise a
That's what
generation of
superpowers do.
STEM kids
Weak
to
powers
keep
give them
American
aid.
tech.
Superpowers take them over. Okay. In other words, I think like Alexander the Great, you take it over. I don't see Alexander the Wimp. You never see make any history books. So once we go in to Afghanistan, Iraq, we take them over. They're ours now. Period. The endo.
Jacoby has probably seen this poster that I have seen as well, and it is this poster where the world is being colonized by America and all along those lines. And I'm not trying to have.
I'm not going to say colonized. We're taking it over. That's
so I think that the two brothers here are wanting this notion of colonizing every little small country and all.
You colonize the world via tech. In 2008, 0 smartphones. Now what? 6 billion smartphones, and it's an American company who brought us the iPhone. So that's how you take over the world with products. And if we can keep bringing the world the products that they love, then we can keep. That's how you run the world.
Yeah, and I like that idea. As long as we run the world, because if we don't run it, China will run it. And actually, we are running out of time, so there's no response from Jacoby. I finally got him to agree with me that the United States needs to take over the world. And we'll see you next week on Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. Until then, have a good week. Bye-bye.